You are listening to the Our View podcast, where we aim to educate, raise awareness, and change the tone of conversation about disabilities. Every week, we bring you episodes that are centered around topics related to disabilities. As the host, it is my hope that you are not just inspired by these stories that are shared, but that you put some action behind your inspiration to do something that improves the lives of those who live with disabilities. I thank you, our loyal listeners, for your support and remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Our View for Life and to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts to tell us what you enjoy most about the podcast. Let's get into this conversation.
My name is Colleen Faul, and I am a mother, a wife and a mother of two children, two toddlers, and I have a son and a daughter. And my daughter, who is 19 months old right now, she has two kind of major conditions. One of them being infantile spasms, and the other being a rare genetic disorder called tuberous sclerosis complex. And we found out about those conditions. She's 19 months old now. We found out when she was 5 months old about those. So a little over a year ago now. And she is such a beautiful little girl. She is, she has my heart. I'm biased, and I think she's the most beautiful little girl in the world. But so when we found out about her conditions, though, I mean, I think every parent assumes that when they have a child, that child is going to be kind of a clean slate, healthy, going to grow up and have, like, they don't know what they're going to be when they grow up, but they have all of these hopes and dreams for them that they may or may not even realize that they have for their kids. And when we found out about Gracie, my daughter's name is Gracie, about Gracie's conditions, it was a real game changer for us. It was kind of a roller coaster for us to go through as her parents, to kind of adjust our perspective of what her life was going to be like and what our lives by extension were going to be like. And for those of you who don't know, so her conditions are infantile spasms, which is a very rare and dangerous form of epilepsy found in young children. And basically what it is a child's brain starts having tiny little seizures over and over again, like seconds apart, and they happen in clusters of up to hundreds at a time. And they can be very damaging to a child's brain. And so when this starts happening, in my daughter's case, we could tell that she was having, they're called spasms, because her arms were shooting up in the air every 10 seconds. And at first we didn't know what they were. We had to take her to the doctor, and a neurologist had to do an EEG. And it was through an EEG that they found out that she was having seizures. So that's how we found that out. And so they got her treatment, and they ordered a bunch of different tests. And in the testing process, they also found out that she had tuberous sclerosis complex, which is a genetic disorder where you're born with a mutation on one of the genes in your DNA. And it's the TSC gene, and that gene is responsible for regulating cellular growth in your body. And so when this gene is malfunctioning, it has a mutation on it, you start having random growths of cells all over your body. So what happens is you end up with all of these benign, non-cancerous tumors, all that just show up on your vital organs, in your brain, in your heart, on your skin, in your eyes. Like, they can show up anywhere basically. And the tumors themselves, they're not cancerous, so they're not dangerous themselves, but depending on where they show up and how big they are and how many there are, they can cause real health complications, and they can show up almost anywhere at any time. So you really have to be on it all the time, and making sure that, and monitoring to make sure that where the tubers are and are treating any health complications that are happening. And in Gracie's case, she's got about at least 10 tubers that are in her brain. And that's almost definitely what caused the infantile spasms. It's what caused the seizures. So they kind of went hand in hand. So those are her conditions. And as a result of that, she has a lot of developmental delays. Her speech is very delayed. She's very slow to, she's 19 months old and still won't eat solid foods. We're getting her evaluated next month for autism. And even though she hasn't been evaluated yet, I'm 100% sure that she has autism, even though she hasn't gotten a diagnosis yet. But so those are the complications that we know of so far. She also had like a couple of holes in her heart, and there was a bunch of stuff. She had a lot of things that we had to monitor and care for to help her be as healthy as possible. And so coming back around to your question about my book, when we found out about all of this, I am a very faithful person. And so I immediately took this to prayer. And I was just praying with God and wrestling with this of, God, what are you asking of me? And what are you asking of my baby? And I was really just kind of, especially at first, just very much struggling with the new realities to our life that I was having to adjust to kind of on a dime. We were just blindsided and shocked by it. And I was praying for God to fix my baby. I was praying, God, heal her. God, make her better. And in praying with that, the idea for this book came to me. And I think that God kind of inspired me to write it as an answer to my own prayer, because it's a children's book. It's called God's Precious Gift, a Special Needs Child. And it's all about God's love for children with special needs and their parents. And it really drives home the message that children with special needs, I mean, it could be applied to anyone, really. It doesn't have to be a child with special needs. But in this book, it's about a child with special needs and how just these children are so deeply loved by God, and how God does not make mistakes. And he gave these children to their parents, not as a mistake, not as an oversight or a punishment, but as a gift, and as a precious gift from God. And that God also gives graces to the parents to be the exact parents that those children need. And that God has known that these children were going to be given to them long before the parents were ever even born. And he has been preparing them to be the parents of those children for their entire lives, whether they realized it or not. And there's a lot in there, and it's all about just how these children are going to have because God allowed their body to be so special, he made sure that their heart and their soul was special too. And he has a special place in he's made their path to heaven easier because of what's going on with their body, and how they are a gift from God to the people around them, because they are an avenue of God's grace to them. And that's kind of the message of the book in a nutshell. I basically kind of just almost read the whole book to you, but it's but it's the story of a mommy and a daddy who find out that their daughter has special needs, and then it jumps to the prayer of this conversation of Jesus answering them, and Jesus has a conversation with the parents, and he brings so much hope and joy, and reminds them that and helps them to understand that this is a gift, that I allowed this to happen because I love you, and not as a mistake, but all of this was love, and it is part of, and this is part of the path to heaven that I have prepared for you. And that was really a message that I know I wasn't thinking that whenever I was praying with this and wrestling with this as a mom, when the idea for the book came to me. So I think God just kind of put it in there as an answer to my own prayer, like I said. And it was it was really consoling to kind of just I wrote it, and then the next morning I came back and read it, and it was like someone else had written it.
Wow.
So it was like I remembered writing it, but I don't remember thinking what to write.
Wow.
It was kind of this really surreal experience. But it's a
Yeah.
beautiful, I know I'm biased again, but I think it's a beautiful book. It's a great book.
It sounds like a beautiful book. It's again, it goes back to people need to learn and people need to be educated about certain things. And
Mhm.
as a parent, I'm not a parent, but I've had last Mother's Day, I had my mom on as a guest
Mm.
on the podcast. My dad
Aw.
passed away when I was 17 of prostate
Oh, I'm
cancer.
so sorry.
Yeah, but I had my mom on as a guest, and
Mhm.
one of my cousins facilitated the conversation because like just the two of us would not have been a good a good thing. But one of my cousins facilitated the conversation with the two
Mhm.
of us, and um, as you said, like every parent, they don't expect things to come up for them for their child when their child
Mhm.
is born, and then you find yourself in these situations. And back when I was born in 1981, they didn't have the 3D ultrasounds that now detect
Mhm.
spina bifida. My parents didn't know I had a disability until I was born. So,
Mhm.
everything was fine and everything was okay through the whole pregnancy. And then, when I was born, the doctor says, "Oh, he has a hole in his back and it's spina bifida." My parents had no idea what in the
Oh,
world that meant. Um,
yeah.
it was like, what does that mean? And what do we do? How do we handle
Mhm.
this? And it was a whole, as I was growing up learning about spina bifida and how my life would be impacted, my parents were doing the same thing apparently
Mhm.
because it was new to them as
Y
well. So,
yes, I very much relate to that because I didn't know what Gracie's conditions were either when they told
mhm.
us what they were. So I very much relate to that.
Yeah, so it's really and my parents we went to church every Sunday, and so we're our faith is very strong. And it was um having the conversation with my mom last Mother's Day on the podcast and hearing the things that she prayed for my life, and just her own questions to God about why was this happening, and
Mhm.
how please make my life easier, and not let it be a rough thing. And so it's like hearing that you wrote this book based on like your own thoughts and your own prayers. It's really
Mhm.
really encouraging to hear that you did this. And I love that you said you wrote it and then it was like somebody else had written it. And it was like
It really was. It really was, and everybody that I have ever met who has read my book has been kinda just universally just like this well, it's a couple of different things. They're either this so wonderfully affirms what I already knew that
mhm,
my child or my sibling or whoever, is in their life, is such a gift from God, or it's someone who says, "This articulates so well what I needed to hear, and this is consoling my heart. Thank you for doing for allowing me to read this."
mhm,
And it's kind of become in its own way, unintended by me. It's kind of become its own little kind of grassroots ministry kind of
mhm,
thing for families with special needs of just spreading the message of God's love for these children and adults with special needs
mhm,
and there's no age limit and just everyone really and it's I've had people tell me that they've read it with their children, and it's been such a and for families that don't have any special needs in them, special needs children in them, and they said that this was a great conversation starter for them to talk about children or people that they know who are different from them and God's love for them, like friends that they have or people in their communities that they've seen that have something different about them. And
mhm,
it's a great way to talk about. why God would allow that to happen, and what's happened, and like what is it exactly,
Hmm.
and how do we react to that, and like it's been a wonderful resource for families
Hmm.
to begin that conversation, and it's been great. It's really been great for them. And I didn't intend any of that.
Yeah.
It was great.
it
It just kind of happened. God just kind of took it and ran with it.
Yeah, and it is great because it goes back to um my reason for why I started my Our View company, where my
Mhm,
nephew, his classmates were looking at me, and I had to explain to him that they were looking at me because they don't see someone with crutches or a wheelchair. Like it's something different
mhm,
for them. So to have books that are being written like the one that you wrote, where it shows, a child with a disability and special needs, it
mhm,
makes it okay. It makes it okay to talk about, to discuss these things. And even, like you said,
mhm.
for families that don't have a child with a disability or with special needs, they just, they can talk to their child about this, and make it okay to have a conversation.
Mhm.
Christmas, a couple weeks before Christmas, my friend texted me, and she said her daughter, who was 3, um, I guess Amazon puts out like a Christmas book now, like Toys R Us used to do back in the day. Um,
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
so she, so her daughter, who was 3, she saw um, a new Ken doll from the Barbie and Ken franchise, and Ken is
Uh-huh.
using a wheelchair. So her daughter says she wants the Ken doll because it's like her Uncle Arthur, and she has
Oh.
to have the Ken doll for Christmas. And a week or so after that, my friend texts me again, and she says, "If you could have seen the confused look on this Santa Claus's face when my daughter's explaining to him why she needs this Ken doll that's in a wheelchair like her uncle." She said, "I had to actually
Oh.
go over to him and say, okay, here's the deal. Have a friend from college who she calls her uncle. He uses a wheelchair. The Ken doll is in the wheelchair. All of a sudden, it's her Uncle
Ah,
Arthur, and so she needs it for Christmas."
that's beautiful.
and it was
That's so
so
beautiful.
and
I
it was
love it.
so great. And Christmas morning, she texted me and said, "Hey, let us know when we can call you." And she called me, and her daughter says, "Oh, I got this for Christmas from Santa." And they named it Uncle Arthur. Her son did. Her son named it Uncle Arthur. She said, "I was wondering what they were going to name it." She said, "And I was in the other room, and I just hear him going, 'Uncle Arthur, don't do that.' Don't do that."
That's awesome.
And then come to find out, my friend's brother and sister-in-law got their son. It's a remote control wheelchair, uh, that a guy, I forget his name. His first name is Aaron, I believe, and he does all the tricks and stuff. He was on America's Got Talent, I think, last season or 2 seasons ago.
Oh.
And he has a motorized remote control wheelchair that my friend's brother and his wife, they got their nephew, so they were all excited, and they called it an Uncle Arthur Christmas at their house.
That's
So,
awesome.
you know,
That's
so
awesome.
yeah, so making toys like that and writing books like the one that you wrote are so important to be out into the world, and it really helps with changing the way that people view those of us
Mhm,
with disabilities. It makes it okay to talk about, and it's not a scary thing to discuss. And I always love, and I've said it 100 times on this podcast, I love that my friends um,
mhm.
allow me around their children to talk about my disability and to see my disability. And it's just, it makes them comfortable to talk about. And
Mm.
I have other friends who, my wheelchair comes apart like a transformer. The wheels pop off and the back folds down. And so I have friends who every time their son sees me, he's like, "Oh, I'm going to help him put his chair together. It's so cool." Like he thinks my wheelchair is
Oh.
cool. And I'm like, "Sure, of course you can help me." So it's not scary for him. And I love that because I'm hopeful that when they see another student that comes to their school with a wheelchair or crutches or any
Mm,
type of disability, they can be okay with it, and become friends with them, like, like their parents
Mhm.
became friends with me. And that's what,
Mhm.
that's what it really gives me a lot of hope. So I said all of that to say thank you for writing this book.
Oh, it was a pleasure. No,
Yeah.
it's like you're sharing your story, your Uncle Arthur Christmas story, and
Yes.
that's I love that. And it reminds me of in college, my I met and lived with for 7 years this wonderful, wonderful woman. I say woman, she's younger than me. She was my college roommate, and she has spinal muscular atrophy, and she is in a motorized wheelchair, and she is just the purest heart of gold person that you've ever met. And I've got two little toddlers at home, and
Hmm.
my son in particular, we bring them around her, and he is like mystified by her wheelchair. He thinks it's the coolest thing in the world, and what he really, really wants to do more than anything else is to climb on it. And we have to tell him, like, because when he tries, he'll like knock her off. So like we have to tell him, no, that's Miss Alyssa's wheelchair, and it's like that. He is just it's like these wheelchairs are things of wonder to these
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
and he loves it. He loves it. He wants to go see Auntie Alyssa so that he can like try to sneak onto her wheelchair, and like that's and he's no matter how many times we tell him not to, he keeps on sneaking back to try to climb up on the back of it so that she won't see,
Right.
thinking that she won't see him climb on. And it's the cutest, funniest thing. And my friend Alyssa just loves it.
Oh
she
my
she
gosh.
thinks it's funny. Um, but
It is.
it's wonderful.
It is. And it's really, it's again, it's just really great that like kids, they're not afraid of it.
Hmm.
And it's just like, hey, this is a cool thing. I can climb on it. Like that's let's figure this out. Like that's because I'm a kid and that's what I do. I climb on things. So
Hmm.
let's
And it's great that especially if they're aware of and exposed to people with various disabilities and things from a young age, that just innate awareness develops
hmm.
so that it when they grow up, if they see someone in school who's in a wheelchair, they won't be intimidated to go and make friends with them, and they won't think twice whenever you know what, we can't just walk straight into school. We need to go over to the wheelchair ramp to be able to get up on the sidewalk. And
Right.
like things like that won't it won't be a second thought to them. It'll just be automatic of just like this is stuff to be aware of, that is a part of my friend's reality, and I'm here with them in that, and it's part of my reality too, and
Hmm.
I'm going to be here with it.
Right.
And I love that. I love that you are spreading this awareness so that people can be uh, more aware, and a closer community that is more inclusive of every one of its members that way. And I'm
Hmm.
so happy about that.
Yes. So can you share with us where people can purchase your book?
Yes. So it is available on Amazon,
Great.
but I also have a website where I sell the book. And for those of you out there who are wanting to support authors, I definitely make more revenue selling it from my website than selling it from Amazon. So
Hmm.
my website, and there's a lot of other information on my website about my daughter and about tuberous sclerosis and about all kinds of stuff on there. But my website is called godspreciousgift.com, www.godspreciousgift.com.
Great.
And if you want to go on Amazon, that's fine too. But it's God's Precious Gift, A Special Needs Child by Colleen Faul on Amazon, and you'll find it there. And that's where you can
Great.
find it.
Yes, and I have just one final question for you, and that
Mhm.
is, in addition to your own book, of course, and the Bible, what book would you suggest that everyone read?
Okay, so I actually really put some thought into this,
Oh, good.
and the book that I came up the and because I only wanted to recommend a book that I've actually read
Hmm.
and that I know from my own experience that I could say what this was really good to read. And the book that I came up on was this book called How to Really Love Your Child by Dr. Ross Campbell.
Right.
And it's all about the needs of children. It doesn't necessarily specify special needs kids or not. It just says children in general, and it's their emotional needs that every child really needs. They need physical touch, they need eye contact, they need quality time with their parents. They need, like, just, it goes through this list of things that if you have a strong-willed child, if you have a shy child, if you have just whatever kind of or a special needs child, if whatever kind of child that you're dealing with, they all have this need from you as their parent, and it goes through how to really love them and make them feel loved, because you can love, the point of the book is that you can have all the love in the world for your child, but if they don't feel loved, there's
Mm.
gonna that child is gonna struggle. So this is how to communicate and make your child feel the love that you already have for them, and to make it communicate and transcend into their heart, and for them to know that they are loved because of these things that you're able to do for them, that a child's heart is receptive to and is looking for and yearning for and needs. And it was a wonderful book. It's a short book, it's an easy read, but it was really helpful to me as a mother to read
Hmm.
and to be aware of, and things to do with my kids, both of my kids. And it was a really good book.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story. And again, for writing that book. I will definitely be purchasing the book. And
Thank you.
I'm really excited for, for other people to read your book and to know that you put something so good and so meaningful and necessary out into the world is really exciting. So thank you for sharing your story and to talk about your daughter Gracie. And it's just really, it's just great to talk to you, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It's been such a genuine pleasure being able to talk to you. I've loved every minute of it.
Oh, great,
And
great, and
anything I can do to help promote Our View, let me know, because it's
yes.
a wonderful organization, and I definitely would want to help spread its message if I can.
Oh, thank you so much, and I appreciate that. And I will be in touch with you soon.
Okay, thank you so
All right,
much.
you're welcome.
Bye.
This concludes this episode of the Our View podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on all social media platforms at Our View for Life. That's OURVIEW, the number 4, LIFE. If you have a topic or a person, or if you are a person who would like to be interviewed for an upcoming episode of the podcast, send us a DM on Instagram, send us a message on Facebook, or you can email me at ourviewforlife@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.